just a moment with today's trial of the people versus Puget Sound Energy. While these are not official court proceedings, and we may take theatrical license in representing PSE's responses, the evidence provided about the harms caused by PSE are all based on real facts and past behaviors. These proceedings are being recorded. If you wish to not be recorded, please make sure your camera is turned off. The trial will last until 1 p.m. and be immediately followed by a real press conference regarding Puget Sound Energy's proposed Tacoma LNG gas facility, hearing from some of the litigants in the real appeal that begins on April 12th. Here in the Washington Court of Public Opinion, we recognize that the area within the boundaries of what is known today as Washington State are actually the ancestral homelands of many tribes and nations who have cared for these lands and waters since time immemorial and continue to do so today. Thank you to all of the jurors who have joined us today. We appreciate your service. After the evidence for a charge that has been presented, we will ask you to deliberate on a verdict. You will see a poll pop up on your screen, and you can simply select guilty or not guilty and then press submit, and your vote will be counted. The poll will be active for voting for 90 seconds, and then the results of the poll will be shared with the court. A threshold of 75% or higher from the voting jury is needed in order to return a guilty verdict. Then the people's attorney will present evidence on the next charge. There are 4 categories of charges in the People versus Puget Sound Energy. Charge number 1, criminal neglect of treaty rights and perpetuation of environmental racism. Charge number 2, gross negligence and endangering the public. Charge number 3, false advertising, deceiving the public, corrupting the minds of impressionable youth. And number 4, wanton endangerment or wanton climate destruction, criminally impeding the transition to renewable energy and endangering the continuance of the human race. Thank you to all of the jurors who have joined us today. We appreciate your service. Court is now in session. David Kipnis, attorney for the people. Please call to the stand your first witness.
Good people of the jury, we're about to provide inconclusive evidence proving PSC's blatant disregard for tribal treaty rights in connection with a massive liquefied gas operation the company built on the ancestral tide flats of the Puyallup Tribe. This project is commonly referred to as the Tacoma LNG. For our first witness, the people call Dakota Case Water Warrior. Mr. Case, did PSA engage in meaningful consultation prior to beginning the construction of the pipeline that runs through the Puyallup Reservation? And I have a written testimony from Mr. Case. He claims, no, they did not. In fact, they even sent out an employee to meet us as we held video.
Pardon me, David. Dakota's here with us today. He just got in. Thanks.
Hello.
Mr. Case, thank you for being with us today. First question I have for you. Did PSE engage in meaningful conversation prior to the beginning the construction of the pipeline that runs through the Puyallup Reservation?
No, they even went and made a mockery of it and dropped off a box of Krispy Kreme donuts to our tribal government and our tribal council's office, and sent a PSE consultant down to the prayer vigil that we held down on the pipelines a few years prior.
At this time, the people would like to enter a video evidence of the incident as Exhibit A, and we will now play the clip for the jury.
Dakota.
Oh, you know who I am.
I have the advantage.
You guys doing your research. We've done our research on you guys too. When did you guys give public notice for the pipes going in right here? There wasn't public notice given.
Truly.
And it happened pretty fast.
Truly. We get all of the permits we need
I know, but there wasn't public notice given.
That the jurisdictions tell us to get.
The pipeline was being laid using a right-of-way permit which is basically a sewer line permit. Such permits are not subject to appropriate safety or environmental review.
Oh yeah, let's talk about your guys' insurance, how your guys' insurance only covers $50 million. Let's talk about how it doesn't cover acts of God or terrorist acts or anything else. It just covers $50 million and not only be the start of an LNG spill. I do.
But do you let anyone
because
talk back?
this is happening on my land.
It is.
This is my people's land.
It's historically been your land.
Yeah, it's our land. And you're raping our mother for a profit.
That's on the reservation.
I don't believe it is on the I mean, I think that the reservation, I think the tribe believes it is.
The entire route of the pipeline extension is within the boundaries of the Puyallup Reservation. Not historically, but actually.
The idea is we build this, and then what we do is we go down to the Utilities and Transportation Commission in Olympia and say, we've built this, we've paid this expenditure, this is all of the details of all of the money we spent. Can we put this into our rate base? Puget Sound Energy, obviously, you know, is a utility company, and we are mandated to provide electric utilities to everyone. Gas is not a mandate, but we have over 800,000 customers that expect gas.
PSE customers will pay almost half of the cost of building the facility. The privately owned utility justify this as the plant will provide some gas back to them. But over its life cycle, those customers will only use 2% of the gas it produces.
But this pipeline and plant isn't for the customers.
This particular one happens to not be. The LNG plant is twofold.
This is for profit.
It is a peak shaving facility, and it is to provide cleaner fuel to tote.
Tote is the only customer PSE currently have for the facility. But concerned at the permitting issues surrounding the LNG plant, they have delayed converting ships to run on the fuel. But hey, at least she knew Steve.
So I'm going to say...
Steve's interested, yeah. Are you talking to Steve Storms? Yeah.
I am Steve.
Okay, yeah.
Steve!
Yeah.
I get to meet you! I'm Florida! Nice to meet you!
Wow. Extremely disrespectful. Mr. Case, can you tell us, did PSE engage in a meaningful consultation once the tribe's opposition was clearly stated publicly?
No.
Tell us, did PSA respect the formal stop work request issued by the sovereign Puyallup Tribe government in 2017?
No, they continue to construct the 8 million gallon storage tank and refinery equipment, even though they didn't end up receiving approval for their notice of construction permit until December of 2019, 2 years later. Now they want permission from the Utilities and Transportation Commission to start using the facility, even though the tribe has an active legal appeal.
In 2017 and 18, several court cases were heard regarding people committing nonviolent acts of civil disobedience, locking themselves to construction machinery. Can you tell us what verdicts were handed out by the juries for the charges of trespassing?
Not guilty. The Port of Tacoma failed to be able to prove that the location of the LNG facility was indeed their land, instead finding that if anybody was going to arrest people there, it should have been Puyallup Tribal Police, not Tacoma Police Department.
Interesting. And can you tell us, before Tacoma created much of the land known today as the Port of Tacoma, where the LNG facility currently sits, by dumping toxic soil from the old Arsarco smelter and then covering it with cement about 100 years ago, what would have been in that specific location?
It was a thriving estuary, actual tide flats full of salmon, shellfish, and birds, and other life that sustained our people. Before they dumped that stuff there, nothing was between the Puyallup and the estuary access. All these toxic facilities at the port were built around us without consent, without concern for our health, our concern for the water and the salmon.
Thank you, Dakota. No further questions at this time. Thank you for your time and energy. Next, the people. Call to the stand a representative of the Tacoma Human Rights Commission, Ingrid. Ingrid, please tell the court, did the Human Rights Commission look into the controversial gas facility? And if so, what were the key findings?
Yes, in April of 2019, we looked into the facility after the project had received massive public outcry about a lack of proper health, safety, environmental, and cultural impact analyses. Our overall recommendation was that the supplemental environmental impact statement should consider the potential environmental hazards and human rights injustices to vulnerable, frequently marginalized populations in and near the tide flats area, particularly the Puyallup tribal members and detainees housed at the Northwest Detention Center.
We submit this letter into evidence as Exhibit B. And Ingrid, would you mind reading the highlighted section of that letter for the jury?
Of course. It says, the potential damage to shorelines and marine ecosystems caused by projects like the LNG plant would be an assault on the very culture of the Puyallup Tribe, which has existed on this land since time immemorial. And its operation could destroy the tribe's traditional way of life. Many environmental and social justice organizations stand with the tribe in opposing the proposed LNG plant, end quote.
And Ingrid, could you tell us what actions were taken by PSE or the city of Tacoma, the leading permanent agency, in response to those findings?
There has never been a response to our concerns, and no additional analysis has been conducted.
Thank you. The people rest their case for the charges of criminal neglect, of the treaty rights, and the perpetuation of environmental racism.
All right, jury, this brings us to our first vote. Would the jury please begin deliberation? Use the poll that will pop up on your screen to enter your vote of guilty or not guilty. You have 90 seconds before the poll closes to cast your vote.
I'm gonna tell you fascists sure might be surprised. There's people in this world and we're getting organized. You bound to lose, you fascists bound to lose. Oh, you fascists bound to lose. Oh, you fascists bound to lose. Oh, you fascists bound to lose. You bound to lose. You fascists bound to lose. There's people from every nation marching side by side. They're marching crossing fields where a million fascists died. You're bound to lose. You fascists bound to lose. Oh, you fascists bound.
Thank you. In the charge of criminal neglect and treaty rights and perpetuation of environmental racism, the people find Puget Sound Energy guilty.
The next charge before the Court of Public Opinion in the matter of the people versus Puget Sound Energy is gross negligence and endangering the public.
My friends of the jury, over the next few minutes, we will provide substantial evidence demonstrating how Puget Sound Energy has recklessly endangered the health and safety of communities near the controversial gas facility and communities all over their service territory with acts of gross negligence. The people call to the stand guilty as hell. Puget Sound Energy's senior public relations representative. Mr. Ezell, can you defend your decision to place the gas facility, commonly referred to as the Tacoma LNG, on a location along the Cascadia fault line and Mount Tahoma Lahar zone, a location prone to liquefaction and expected to experience flooding within the timeline of the project?
Look, if it wasn't safe to build the facility, we wouldn't be allowed to build the facility. There's already a bunch of other explosive fossil fuel operations in the same area, so it's not like we're the ones that started it.
Knowing that international standards recommend a 3-mile buffer zone between LNG facilities and populated areas, how do you explain building your facility within a mile of the nearest homes and a 3-mile zone that encompasses thousands of people?
Those are just recommendations. And technically, it's our new shell company, Puget LNG LLC, that owns the facility. So if something were to happen, and I assure you PSE won't be held liable for damages, so it's really not much a concern to the company.
Did you run any safety modeling to analyze the potential harm to the public from an explosion or toxic?
Yes, of course. Of course we ran public safety modeling. We ran an extremely stringent impartial analysis, concluded it would be inconceivable for anything to get past the impenetrable barriers that we have erected at the facility grounds.
By impenetrable barrier, do you mean the chain link fence less than a dozen feet from the busy industrial road?
Yes.
Inconceivable that a giant fireball or toxic vapor cloud could get through a chain link fence?
Hey, that study cost a lot of money, so that conclusion must be true.
I don't think that word means what you think it means. Puget Sound Energy has a track record littered with leaks, explosions, and improper management of gas lines. Didn't one of your gas lines lead to an explosion in the Greenwood neighborhood of Seattle in 2016 that resulted in the destruction of 3 local businesses, numerous first responders to be hospitalized, and millions of dollars of damage after a retired gas line was improperly decommissioned?
Yeah, perhaps, but you can't blame the company for something that was probably the fault of a single employee.
And more recently, a gas leak shut down the main street in the city of Puyallup last summer, caused evacuations and flight delays at the Boeing field in February. And a few weeks ago, an underground leak in one of PSE's gas lines melted through the pavement, causing evacuation in Seattle's Central District. That promoted calls by Seattle Commissioner Councilmember Kshama Sawant to call on the Utilities and Transportation Commission to do an in-depth safety and maintenance investigation of all PSE's gas lines. Wouldn't you say that this sounds like a pattern of safety concerns and violations?
I wouldn't say that. There's more buildings in our service area that haven't blown up or reported leaks than have, so it seems like we're doing all right.
Interesting perspective. No further questions for this witness. The public next calls to the stand Dr. Samoan Faulkner to discuss the facility's direct daily impact on public health. Doctor, can you tell us what this facility will be emitting into the air 24 hours a day and how those emissions can affect the body?
Certainly. The emissions include substances known to be harmful to human health, such as xylene, toluene, benzene, and a number of other toxins and carcinogens. The facility will also emit particulate matter, the leading cause of pollution-related premature death. This will lead to both immediate and long-term health threats that will have the greatest impact on nearby communities, putting them at greater risk of heart and lung diseases, strokes, cancer, abnormal brain development, birth defects, and fertility problems, to name a few.
Wow, some pretty scary impacts for sure. I sure wouldn't want my children or neighborhood or schools around that. Would locating this facility farther away from populated areas have been a good way to lower the number of people impacted by these harmful emissions?
Absolutely. And because the facility will function as a distribution center, there will also be diesel and gas emissions from large trucks along already busy traffic corridors, increasing the health harms on neighboring communities.
The people enter the health disparities map into evidence as Exhibit C. Dr. Simone Faulkner, could you tell us how the neighborhoods closest to the locations picked by PSE for the facility currently fare on the health disparities map, a tool that shows levels of health harming factors?
Yes. The ancestral tide flats of the Puyallup Tribe, known today as the Port of Tacoma, is already an extremely polluted area. In my professional opinion, adding more polluting facilities to this already highly impacted region constitutes gross negligence and environmental racism.
Thank you, Doctor. We have no further questions for you and no further witnesses to the charges of gross negligence and endangering the public.
Jury, it is time for our next vote. Would you please begin deliberation? Use the poll on your screen to enter your vote of guilty or not guilty. You have 90 seconds before the poll closes to cast your vote.
Tell me what's gone wrong. I tilt my head there under the faucet when I turn it on. Rice paper for the neighbor. Who's to blame for what's going on? In the dark without a clue, I'm just the same as you. Oh, they tell us there's poison in the ground, that someone's been a bit untidy, and there's been a small spill. Not a lot, no, just a drop. There you are, mistaken, you know you are. I wonder just how long they knew our well was poison, but they let us.
On the charges of gross negligence and endangering the public, we find Puget Sound Energy guilty.
Thank you, jury. The next charge before the Washington Court of Public Opinion in the matter of the people versus Puget Sound Energy are false advertising, deceiving the public, and corrupting the minds of impressionable youth.
Now, the people will prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Puget Sound Energy consistently misrepresented the climate and health impacts and supposed benefits of gas fuel and gas for cooking, spending millions on advertising and PR campaigns, even going as far as to target impressionable children and launching fear-based smear campaigns against local initiatives to switch to public-owned utilities or to have new buildings be healthier and cleaner without fossil fuels. For our first witness, we call Hiram, an 8th grader, to the stand. Hiram, thank you so much for being here today. Can you tell us how old you are? Hiram, are you with us today?
Yes, I am 14 years old. I'm here.
Thank you so much for being here and taking your time out of your busy day. Did your class receive a presentation designed by Energy Safe Kids about natural gas. And what did that presentation include?
There were coloring pages with natural gas, town, and a flame mascot called Don Fuego. We also played a computer game where we had to escape a building with a gas leak, jumping over obstacles to get to safety. There was also a short music video with a cartoon hero singing about gas.
The people enter the Energy Safe Kibbs website about gas into evidence as Exhibit D. Hiram, one more thing. What did you take away from this lesson?
Well, I've watched Greta Thunberg's speeches about how we need to get off fossil fuels if we want the planet to still be a good place for humans to live by the time I'm 23 years old. So I wondered why the school didn't teach us about renewable energy sources instead. I also wondered why they would have us play a game about something as serious as escaping gas leaks, especially when other forms of energy don't even need escape plans. It's like they want us to think it's normal, but it's not.
Thank you, Hiram. You've been very helpful, and we don't have further questions for you. Next, we call back to the stand, Dr. Simone Faulkner to testify about the potential health impacts of cooking with gas in our homes. Dr. Simone Faulkner, please tell us what the medical community has documented about the potential impacts.
Yes, what we found is that the majority of pollutants contributing to poor indoor air quality originate inside buildings. Gas appliances worsen air quality both indoors and outdoors by emitting toxic pollutants. Gas stoves warrant particular scrutiny for their contribution to indoor air pollution. Just 1 hour of cooking on a gas stove can lead to indoor pollutant levels that would be illegal if found outdoors. Gas combustion emits fine particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, formaldehyde, and other volatile organic compounds. Children in homes that use gas for cooking have a 42% higher prevalence of asthma and a 24% increased lifetime risk compared to homes with electric stoves. Homes with gas stoves have anywhere between 50 to 400 or higher levels of nitrogen dioxide, which impedes lung function. We see these consequences evidenced by increases in lung cancer, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and heart disease, increases in premature deaths, asthma, and allergic illnesses, increased hospital and emergency visits for acute respiratory symptoms, and increased school and work absenteeism. We see increases in depression, suicide, violence, traumatic illness, and substance abuse.
Starking information. Is this critical health information widely available to the public, making it logical to believe that these statistics are known by Puget Sound Energy and Partnership for Energy Progress, a PR front group for the gas industry that PSE is a part of?
Yes, this information has been documented since early 2015. One further issue, PSE, along with Cascade Natural Gas and Avista, has continued to pay their executives exorbitant amounts of money and profit shareholders while refusing to contribute to the COVID crisis that is disproportionately harming low-income families. What are the health implications here? Well, as you know, we are amidst a global pandemic, and the risk that comes without having access to utilities like water, which is important for washing hands, is significant. These companies expect customers to pay the costs related to this pandemic while they, the private utility companies, reap profits. And now they may start cutting off people's gas and electric utilities. PSE likes to talk about keeping the lights on, but in reality, they are keeping their customers in the dark and doing a poor job at keeping people connected to safe, affordable power. Utility service is essential for health, and PSE treats certain customers as expendable. We need the Utilities and Transportation Commission to hold private corporations like PSE accountable always, but especially during this health crisis.
Thank you, Dr. Simone Faulkner. No further questions for you. Next, we call Rachel, a resident of Thurston County. Rachel, can you tell us about how Puget Sound Energy responded to a 2012 ballot initiative in which the people of Thurston County attempted to create a public utility district to replace PSE's electric utility?
Sure. Puget Sound Energy spent immense amounts of money in the county trying to influence the vote. $400,000, in fact. It was the single most expensive election in Thurston County history.
And can you tell the court what kinds of angles the opposition used to deter people from voting for the public to own its own electric utility?
Well, they played up the fear that by creating the Public Utility District, or PUD, this would somehow increase everyone's monthly power bills. With so many people already living paycheck to paycheck, this idea is quite scary for most folks. So, despite not having any evidence to back up their claims, and despite PSE already being the most expensive utility in our state, the mailers, constant TV, and radio ads resulted in the final vote being 61% against the Public Utility Initiative. I know PSE has used these tactics other times as well, like when Whidbey Island and Skagit County also tried to escape the clutches of PSE for public ownership.
Next, I'd like to talk about PSE's involvement in shutting down local and state attempts to get our buildings healthier and safer by moving away from fossil fuel energy sources. Rachel, can you tell us about your experience trying to advocate for the passage of Healthy Homes and Clean Buildings Bill and PSE's role in defeating its passage?
Yes, working on that bill was like playing whack-a-mole with disinformation that PSE was pushing. And now that they have stopped meaningful action at the state level, they're working to stop cities from taking action as well.
Could you say a little more about what you mean by disinformation?
Well, in every public hearing, we would hear the same false information, that the bill was a ban on natural gas, that would make your utility rates skyrocket, that would be killing jobs in industry. None of this was true. But if it were, it would be scary, and PSE knew how to play on people's fears. PSE reps themselves would go on record and testify that the bill would do things that weren't even in it. We know this isn't because they forgot to read the bill or misunderstood it. They knew exactly what they were doing. They know that folks would hear them say something scary that wasn't even in the bill and latch onto it without a second thought.
And in what ways is PSE trying to limit electrification elsewhere in the state?
Building on the false narrative they have been able to establish about the cost of switching to electricity in buildings. PSE is trying to preempt all further action on building electrification. Even though they defeated 1084, they want to make sure that no other policies from anywhere else in the state will ever restrict them. This is significant because the bill was not even as strong on the use of gas as many other cities are currently or in the near future, like Seattle and Bellingham.
The people now call back to the stand. Thank you much for your time. People now call back to the stand. Guilty Zell, on behalf of Puget Sound Energy, to respond to these claims of false advertising, deceiving the public and corrupting the minds of impressionable youth. Mr. Ezell, fossil fuel companies have been accused of using tactics similar to the tobacco industry, who made baseless, wild claims and covered up health impacts while often even going so far as to claim health benefits. What do you have to say about the gas campaign aimed specifically at children?
Puget Sound Energy is not directly responsible for those materials.
While it's true that the children materials were funded by the Partnership of Energy Progress, isn't it true that Puget Sound Energy gives generously to that partnership?
I would say generous is a relative term. I think who can say?
PSE also helps fund an advertising campaign that glorifies cooking with gas and has plans to target people by demographics, including young families. How does PSE defend this behavior with the health impacts of indoor stoves now circulating widely?
Puget Sound Energy does not directly fund any such campaign.
But PSE does give funding to the American Gas Association, do they not? In fact, PSE's former CEO was actually the president.
Yes, we are a proud member, helping bring energy independence and molecules of freedom to the state of Washington and beyond.
Since the Cooking with Gas campaigns are funded by the American Gas Association, which PSE is a proud member of, doesn't that make PSE somewhat of an accomplice in knowingly targeting different demographics for something that has been proven to significantly harm their health?
Proven is also a relative term. You can show me any stat, and I'm sure I can produce another highly paid doctor to call your doctor a liar.
I see. Do you have any response to the allegations of preying on people's fears and financial insecurities as a way to shut down attempts by local communities to create public utilities or decarbonize buildings while also making them healthier?
Look, Puget Sound Energy shouldn't have to apologize for having a well-oiled communications team or for our impressive and consistent stream of mailers, social media, radio, and TV ads. Those witnesses sound like sore losers looking for attention. I would pay them no mind.
Well, Mr. Guilty as L, thank you for that deep and enlightening testimony. The people rest and are ready for the jury to deliberate on the charges of false advertising, deceiving the public, corrupting the minds of impressionable youth.
Jury, it is time for your next vote. Would you please begin deliberation? Once again, you will use the poll that pops up on your screen to enter your vote of guilty or not guilty. You will have 90 seconds to cast your vote before the poll closes.
On the charges of false advertising, public deception, and corruption of impressionable youth, the people find Puget Sound Energy guilty.
Thank you, jury foreperson. The final charges before the Washington Court of Public Opinion today in the matter of the people versus Puget Sound Energy are wanton climate destruction, criminally impeding the transition to renewable energy, and endangering the continuance of the human race.
People of the jury, our final charges today not only affect Puget Sound Energy's customers and the people of Washington. These next crimes affect people all over the globe and the generations not born yet. Next, the people call Mariah to the stand. Mariah, thank you for being here today. Could you tell us how old you are and how long you've been paying attention to climate issues?
Yes, I'm 12 years old and have been a frontline water protector for 6 years. I've learned that we only have a short amount of time to save Unchimaka and all life.
Thank you. And what have you learned in that time that might be a huge factor in hurting our planet and life?
We had to stop taking from our mother and hurting her. Fracking and drilling for dirty fuels hurts her and its effects hurt us. We haven't got long to fix things.
Mariah, do you know how long scientists say we have to make changes like getting off fossil fuel energy?
I know that when I'm out of my teens, it will be almost too late. I'm 13 next March, so we need to get busy. I know that no matter how hard I work or how many signs I hold up, it's someone else making the choice of my future for me. Before my generation even has a chance to do it right. If the so-called adults who have the power cared, companies like Puget Sound Energy wouldn't be able to hurt us now.
I can't help but think about what a big burden that must be to a person of your age. Can you tell me how you feel when I tell you that PSE's recently released a 20-year plan instead of investing heavily in green energy and renewables? PSE intends to build even more gas plants that will run for another 30 to 40 years.
Mad, but of course they will do that. They're not even a real company and they have nothing to do with the Puget Sound other than hurting it. They are just people in other places wanting to make a profit to buy a 7th yacht. They don't think what happens to them. They don't think what happens to us happened to them because their money has made them stupid.
I want to change up a little bit. I think were you hopeful about a bill that you heard about that was proposed to state legislature called Healthy Homes and Clean Buildings?
A bit. I'm not sure how all of this works. Some of these things seem so obvious, and making places safer and less harmful is as obvious as it gets. Having gas in your home as a kid means you're more likely to have problems with things like asthma. What is wrong with any adult that thinks that isn't enough to make some changes?
Indeed. Are you able to tell the court the status of the Healthy Homes and Clean Buildings bill?
They just talked about it, really. It didn't get out of that talky part. Those guys have a really important job. They might decide if kids my age have a planet to be adults on, and they only work for 3 months every year. So nothing they do really makes sense. It's all lies and pretend caring. We're in a climate emergency. They need to act like it.
Mariah, thank you for your time today and your caring. You've been really helpful. And we'll do all we can to help hold PSE accountable for these crimes against your generation and generations we hope will be able to follow. Thank you for your time. We now reluctantly call Mr. Guilty as Hell back to the stand to let PSE answer to these very serious charges. Mr. Ezell, please tell us, why did PSE's 20-year plan still call for expanding fossil fuels and disregard investments in real solutions?
Sir, PSE has acted within the boundaries of the Clean Energy Transformation Act. We cannot be blamed or held accountable for a lack of enforcement or any loopholes contained in the law. You are hating the player, but your issue is with the game.
Some might argue that you could be responsible for the act of not being stronger, pointing to the immense amounts of money that Puget Sound Energy puts into lobbying, contributions, and influencing ballot initiatives. How would you respond to those claims?
Like I just said, don't hate the player, hate the game.
In comparing the sources of PSE's electrical service to nearby public and city-owned utility districts, we see the Snohomish County PUD having less than 2% of their energy income from fossil fuels. Seattle City Light having less than 5%. Can you tell us why Puget Sound Energy has 56% of their electric energy derived from fossil fuels?
Our fossil fuels are bridge fuels. Have you not heard? We are bridging the fossil fuel.
I'd like to bring back up the Tacoma LNG as an example for a moment. The justification for building this facility that will emit toxins and carcinogens 24 hours a day is that it would be a benefit to the climate because it would displace the bunker fuel marine vessels would be using if they didn't use LNG gas. However, numerous studies have now been done, including one by the International Maritime Organization, that concluded LNG, in fact, is not a climate solution for the shipping. The people enter this 2019 report into evidence as Exhibit E. PSE flooded the Tacoma area with ads with the catchphrase, "Clean, safe, local," and showed up to town halls performing silly stunts like claiming to put out cigarette butts out in a glass of LNG gas to demonstrate safety. By spreading these lies and wasting investments meant to address the climate crisis, the people argue that this is another example of how PSE criminally is holding back the transition to renewable energy. How does PSE respond to these serious allegations?
Look, okay. Puget Sound Energy is sticking with our claims. LNG gas is a miraculous bridge fuel. We can produce a scientist to refute those studies, no problem. Those claims that it's not safe. And here I remain, perfectly safe. We're putting out the cigarette in a glass of LNG gas as we speak.
And how do we know, myself and the jury, that that's just not water in your cup?
Trust us, we never lie. We're just your friendly neighborhood utility. Haven't you seen our commercials with cartoon animals and Sasquatch playing in the woods?
The people have no further use for this witness. We rest our case.
Jury, would you please begin your next deliberation? Use the poll on your screen to enter your vote of guilty or not guilty. You have 90 seconds to vote before the poll closes.
This is an open letter from you and me together. Tomorrow's in our hands now.
Find the words that matter, say them out loud. I'll make it better somehow.
Looking down from up on the moon is a tiny blue marble. Who'd have thought the ground we stand on
Could be so fragile.
This is an possessions, my
Thank you. On the charges of wanton climate destruction, criminally impeding the transition to renewable energy, endangering the continuance of the human race, we find Puget Sound Energy guilty.
Puget Sound Energy, you have been found guilty of numerous charges today by the Washington Court of Public Opinion. Madam Foreperson of the jury, will you please read out loud the restorative measures of that Puget Sound Energy is hereby ordered to take?
Yes, we find in the People of Washington Court of Public Opinion, we order Puget Sound Energy, we order Puget Sound Energy to decommission the Tacoma LNG facility, which violates treaty rights and perpetuates environmental racism. Puget Sound Energy must immediately cease meddling in Washington's politics via campaign contributions, lobbying, and advertisements pertaining to ballot measures. We order any money set aside for corporate bonuses this year instead go towards canceling utility debts for low income and pandemic affected residential customers. We order Puget Sound Energy to voluntarily disclose the safety and maintenance records for all gas lines and infrastructure under their management. Puget Sound Energy must immediately cease contributing to any advertising that touts the false benefits of fossil gas or promotes the harmful practice of cooking with gas. Puget Sound Energy must immediately revise its 20-year plan to invest in real solutions like wind, solar, energy efficiency, and battery storage instead of more gas infrastructure, while also planning a path to draw down the percent of energy currently coming from fossil fuel sources.
Wow. Thank you, people of the jury, for your powerful service here today. This concludes our trial for the People versus Puget Sound Energy. Please stick around as we go live to a press conference concerning the real court case that is coming up in April, where the Puyallup Tribe and Earth Justice are appealing the final permit of Puget Sound Energy's liquefied gas facility referenced earlier in our proceedings. We'll turn it over to Megan Ybarra to open up the press conference and introduce our speakers. We will then take questions from the press.
Thank you all for joining us as we shined a light on PSE's actions to harm the people and the planet. One of PSE's most egregious moves over the last few years has been the process surrounding the LNG facility constructed on the ancestral tide flats of the Puyallup Tribe. The entire permitting process has been controversial and rife with concerns. We look forward to the legal appeal beginning on April 12th. As you heard during the mock trial, Puget Sound Energy is seeking permission to turn on the plant at full capacity while the court trial will still be in deliberation. There is a link that's going to be dropped in the chat that you can follow to urge the State Utilities and Transportation Commission to do the right thing and let the court determine if the facility has actually satisfied its permit requirements. Now, I'd like to invite a few folks to speak, and then we will invite members of the press to ask questions, and feel free to drop those in the chat as they arise. First, I'd like to invite Jaimini Parekh, representing Earth Justice. Do we have a representative of Earth Justice with us?
Can you hear me? Hi, everyone. So should I just kind of give a background about the case?
That would be great. Thank you.
Great. So thanks all for this presentation. It was wonderful. I really appreciated it, and also appreciated the smoking. So what we are doing is we are challenging the air pollution permit that was issued by the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency, and the case is being heard before the Pollution Control Hearings Board. And this facility has had a lot of different permits. This is one of the last ones. And one of the primary issues, the primary issue that we are litigating is whether the air agency failed to disclose the climate harms caused by greenhouse gas pollution from the Tacoma LNG facility. And as was presented by the excellent counsel of record in this matter, Mr. Kipnis, there are going to be serious climate harms from this project. Puget Sound Clean Air Agency has misled the public about harms to global climate change from greenhouse gas pollution caused by this facility. They claim that the facility would benefit the climate by marginally reducing greenhouse gas pollution by 2 to 3%, as compared with existing fossil fuel emissions. And that would be locked in over the next 40 years. So a lot of numbers, what does that mean? This is basically greenwashing. Maintaining business as usual emissions does not benefit the climate. Quite the opposite. It is committing the planet to catastrophic global climate change. There is a widespread consensus that we need to dramatically reduce greenhouse gas emissions, achieving net zero by 2050. And this project would put us on the highway to continue greenhouse gas emissions for the next 40 years. And by calling it a climate benefit, that is greenwashing at its worst. That is like a chain smoker arguing that smoking 9 cigarettes instead of 10 cigarettes benefits their lungs. And what's even worse is that the agency's board itself has set ambitious targets to reduce greenhouse gas pollution. And the staff that approved the project appeared unaware of the agency's own policies. And moreover, the environmental impact statement that we're challenging is just plain wrong. It's based on a series of falsehoods and incorrect assumptions that understate emissions. These falsehoods include that the marine shipping sector would fail to achieve its greenhouse gas reduction targets that are being set by the International Maritime Organization. They rely on industry studies as opposed to the vast majority of scientific literature finding that upstream methane loss would be significant. And they also assume that downstream methane loss would be minimal against the recommendation of their own consulting experts. And basically what this project would do is lock in fossil fuel emissions for decades and inhibit a transition to near zero or zero emission technology for marine vessels. So these are the issues that we're going to be litigating at the trial, which is coming up. It's the first day of the trial is on April 12th, and that's when you're going to hear opening statements. And so we encourage you all to attend. My co-counsel Jan Hasselman will be leading that effort. So if you can plug into that, it is going to be open to the public, and you'll be able to listen to that while it's happening in real time. Before the other thing I wanted to touch on is some of the safety risks from this project. This is something that has not really received a lot of public discussion, but it is serious. Puget Sound Energy found that in its siting and safety studies that there could be that a piece of equipment at the facility could catastrophically fail. But what it never did is it never evaluated the hazards associated with that failure. And our expert basically did an analysis, and he determined that if it indeed failed, if that equipment failed, it would cause a fireball explosion and a pressure wave blast that could damage nearby equipment on site. And an explosion of this magnitude would cause serious public safety hazards both to dock workers and neighbors. And it was never disclosed to the public or regulators. The other reason we're really concerned about this facility is that PSE failed to disclose the safety concerns that are presented by this facility. They developed a siting and safety study and a fire protection evaluation for the project based on their old design. The redesigned facility, they then redesigned the facility to accept incoming gas that is more flammable and explosive, and as a result could pose a greater danger to the public. And what that means is that they installed new equipment that would handle highly flammable and potentially explosive materials. They increased trucking of these materials offsite and increased the amount of materials that are going to be passing through the facility. And yet they never evaluated what are the safety hazards caused by redesigning the facility in this way. And this is highly concerning because when they submitted to safety agencies such as the Tacoma Fire Department and the Washington Utilities Commission, when they applied for their permits from these agencies, they relied on these outdated studies to obtain those permits. And so what we're seeing here is a dangerous and disturbing bait and switch, where these safety hazards have not been evaluated or disclosed to the public or to regulating agencies. And so we're advocating on behalf of our clients to ensure that public safety is a paramount priority, and also to ensure that the climate impacts of this project are disclosed and not hid behind a guise of greenwashing.
Thank you for that crucial information, Jiminy. I also wanted to just briefly point out the information that was added in the chat, which is that Power Pass Frac Gas will follow up with everyone who's registered for this trial with information, so you can tune in and watch the hearing that Earth Justice is one of the plaintiffs on. I next have a statement to share from David Z. Bean, who is chairman of the Puyallup Tribal Council. Quote, "The tribe continues to be frustrated that the Puget Sound Clean Air Agency is not considering the appropriate science and putting dangerous impacts on an already disproportionately impacted community. Even more shocking to us is that this facility would operate in a densely populated urban area, and yet no authority has taken a serious look at the consequences of a catastrophic incident at this facility. That's not just unfair to the people who live here, it's dangerous." Next, I have Nick Manning, a climate policy organizer with Washington Physicians for Social Responsibility.
Yes, thank you, Megan, and hey, everybody. I jumped off screen really fast to shave that horrible goatee that I had to play the evil PSE persona. So thank you all for being here for some of that kind of silly, but also very serious performance that we threw together. And it's just kind of crazy that we can be honest about making fun of it in a way that's actually happening and have that be the real way that PSE has been behaving in court. But anyway, as Megan said, I represent Washington Physicians for Social Responsibility. We're a co-litigant on the case, kind of just with Earth Justice in support. They're obviously leading the charge, but we have been involved in fighting this facility for a really long time. And I just kind of wanted to mention a bit about, from a health perspective and from health professionals we represent, what our biggest concerns are and what we're really trying to make sure that people are aware of in the dangers in the facility. I mean, if we actually had a cumulative health impacts review, it'd be obvious that there's no way this would go forward. But since we do not have one, we are concerned about a variety of health risks. First, just that flammable emissions released as a normal and daily component of LNG bunkering in close proximity to other heavy industry at a busy port poses a grave risk of explosion. And we've seen this in Washington. It's not such past distant memory in 2015 when Plymouth, Washington had a really serious explosion that injured first responders and forced hundreds to evacuate. We know this is definitely a possibility. It's something that we are really concerned about. Second, that the chemicals and toxins and carcinogens released from this facility daily, things like xylene, benzene, some of the stuff that was actually mentioned in the mock trial that you guys just listened to, are really dangerous for the surrounding communities, particularly, pose some very serious health and safety risks. They've been linked to lung disease, heart disease, premature death, strokes, cancer, fertility problems. The list could continue, and we fully don't understand, even to this day, the full variety of health risks associated with some of these really harmful toxic chemicals. But we know that the people living right next to the facility especially are at really serious risk of contamination from these chemicals that are just coming off the facility. And third, this facility is fed with fracked gas. And that process in itself creates a whole nother can of worms of health issues that I could spend a whole nother webinar talking about. But suffice it to say that fracked gas releases toxic air contaminants that exacerbate asthma, contribute to cancer and heart disease, premature death. We found issues with fertility and birth defects. And it's a nightmare, especially for people that are located right next to these fracked gas sites, mostly in British Columbia, who are experiencing the brunt of these impacts and are really out of luck when it comes to doing anything to preserve their health. So it's a really dire situation, and we very much appreciate the guidance and leadership from Earth Justice. And just from our perspective, we're here to try and really speak truth to power about the health impacts of this facility and what it really means for the community. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Nick. Also, I would like to comment on your acting and just say that it was superb. Next, we have Jessica Zimmerly, Program and Outreach Director for Earth Ministry.
Good afternoon. It is good to be together. My name is Jessica Zimmerly. I am the Program and Outreach Director at Earth Ministry and Washington Interfaith Power and Light. We are a statewide organization that works with people of faith in the movement for environmental justice. So I serve nearly 250 houses of worship and 5,000 individuals who live within the boundaries of PSE's service area. These are folks from a broad range of spiritual traditions, and they are doing all they can to put their faith into action for the well-being of communities and the environment. I'm here representing faith leaders that are greening their congregational life, their home life, and doing all they can to leave a healthy legacy for our youth today and all generations yet to come. And though diverse in our beliefs, the faith community comes together around shared core values. They include upholding treaty promises, seeking justice for all, and being good stewards of our one and only planet. These values have led us to repeatedly call on PSE to halt their dirty and dangerous fracked gas facility. Now, you heard the charges leveled today by the people against PSE, and first and foremost among the list of wrongdoings is disregard of the Puyallup Tribe's treaty rights. The Tribal Council and water warriors have said time and time again, no, and no should mean no. Not only are we accountable to the supreme law of the land and our treaty obligations to the Puyallup, we also have a serious moral obligation to respect and follow the caretakers of this place since time immemorial. The possibility that this fracked gas facility could go online before the verdict of the tribe's legal appeal is simply appalling. The people have found this blatant behavior by PSE to be deeply disrespectful, unethical, and violating. And in preparing for today, I came across an interesting page on PSE's website that is dedicated to their ethics and goals. They state, quote, their ethics and compliance program covers a broad range of topics, but can be summarized in one simple sentence: do what is right. I believe this is a relatively new page, at least I don't recall it being there last time I combed their website. And they even now have an ethics phone line that you can call with feedback. This edition is likely because the public outcry against their climate wrecking ways has been so loud and persistent over the last few years. PSE has been on trial in the court of public opinion for quite some time and has been found undeniably guilty. And PSE keeps trying to convince the public and perhaps even themselves that what they are doing is right. In reality, their greenwashing and deception is beyond wrong. They tout ethics similar to our own, like being a good neighbor, promoting environmental stewardship, taking personal responsibility. Yet we have found their expression of these stated values to be lacking authenticity and accountability. And the final ethic that PSE lists on their website is that they will continue to learn and grow. that they will, quote, examine past practices, challenge assumptions, and apply lessons learned to improve our efforts as we get better at what we do every day. So we're looking at you, PSE, and challenging you to live into this stated commitment. We call on PSE to examine your past practices of disregard for the Puyallup Tribe, to challenge your assumption that your customers want or need more fossil fuels, and to apply lessons learned to improve your practices and actually do what is right. At the very least, the ethical path forward is to hold off on bringing the facility online until the real legal appeal has been finished. So our trial is not over today, friends. PSE will continue to be judged in the court of public opinion, and you matter in this movement. The faith community in Tacoma and beyond, alongside the entire Power Pass Fracked Gas Coalition, will keep speaking out against PSE's fracked gas facility. We pray that the UTC hears our cry that this dirty and dangerous project is not in the public interest, and we hold hope as we actively work for a future in which treaty promises are honored, public safety is prioritized over industry profits, and both our climate and communities thrive in good health. Thanks. Back to you, Megan.
Thank you very much, Jessica. I also put a few of the links that she mentioned in the chat for you to see. And Jan Hasselman has also pointed out that they claim to be committed to, quote, deep decarbonization, unquote, with a link for you to read and enjoy. Last but not least, we have Barbara Church. Barb is a longtime Tacoma resident and member of The Conversation, a local organization committed to building diverse, critically engaged communities of justice in the South Sound.
Thank you, Megan. My name's Barbara Church. I'm 74 years old and a resident of Northeast Tacoma, and I live near the Port of Tacoma. When I was young, I lived near the Asarco smelter, and I could smell the toxins in the air, and the taste of sulfur in my throat made me wheeze and have trouble breathing. Because I grew up poor, my family did a lot of activities that drew me closer to nature, like camping and hiking. I loved the trees and marveled at the mountains and the flowers and the critters. I could fish for salmon or cod or trout in the bay or the rivers. I would see wild turkeys in Point Defiance Park, watch the eagles and the deer and the other wildlife. I used to drink water straight from the rivers. Those life experiences grounded me in the importance of having clean air, water, and fertile soil. But so much has changed. Now when I look out at the bay, there's a constant haze, so much worse than when I was young. I don't even fish there anymore. The water's too dirty. And sometimes there are warnings to stay out of the bay. You can't drink out of streams anymore either, like I used to. And when I drive through the Port of Tacoma, which is almost daily, the smell is so foul that I have to roll up my window and circulate the air inside. My granddaughter always warns me, roll up the window. So there's my cue. A couple of weeks ago, there was a ship on fire with refrigerant on it, ammonia burning and gas leaking. It took 2 days to put out the fire. The LNG has refrigeration multiple times what was on that ship. When it was burning, the Puyallup Tribe moved some of their members and told others to stay in their homes with windows and doors closed. We heard nothing from the city of Tacoma or the port, but we could smell the toxic burning. Incidents like these are not rare. I read a 2005 article years ago from Richard Clark, a Homeland Security terrorist specialist, about not having an LNG facility in an urban area because it's a safety and a terrorist risk. This is relevant in 2021. The LNG plant fits in the pattern of systemic racism that has been going on in our country for hundreds of years. These are century-old patterns about how whites have taken away livelihoods from people of color and indigenous communities, both legally and illegally. It just required them to turn a blind eye to people who have purposefully been marginalized and their culture diminished for economic profit. This narrow economic view of the LNG project failed to see the destructive impact on the Puyallup Tribe's culture and surrounding BIPOC communities. Let's not let that haze over the bay and the port dull our vision. Let's see this picture clearly. Puget Sound Energy's LNG facility will release dangerous pollutants, as Physicians for Social Responsibility and others have already shared. Because of my proximity to the LNG plant and the port, my neighborhood already ranks in the top 20% of the most affected by environmental health disparities. With a pending court case, we hope that the Utilities and Transportation Commission won't allow Puget Sound Energy to begin using this toxic and dangerous facility while we await the court's decision. We hope and anticipate that the highly controversial clean air permit will be invalidated. As part of the BIPOC community myself, because of my age and living so close to the Port of Tacoma, I'm high risk. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Barb, and thank you for all the work that you've been doing on this for such a long time. I want to just say that we are coming up on 1:30, and I want to respect everybody's time and just end by saying that I am grateful to all of you who have been working on defending Tacoma, the Salish Sound, and protecting treaty rights for so many years. There are a number of institutions that have failed us. I'm thinking, there are a number of questions about the Port of Tacoma, the City of Tacoma, various state agencies, as well as Puget Sound Energy itself. And yet we here today are proof that community can come together to protect each other. So please do continue to share this information out with your friends, with folks who are affected by this, but maybe haven't had the opportunity to learn about it. Please do continue to reach out to the Utility and Transportation Commission, and do give Earth Justice all of your thoughts and prayers as we think about the need to get rid of a clean air permit for something that will not make our air clean. We've got a few more opportunities. You can learn about the permit rules in Washington with the link that was just dropped in the chat. And as a final reminder, we will go ahead and send out an email with all of these links that are getting dropped into the chat for you to follow up on later, and to also hopefully share out with your friends in the Puget Sound area, because many of us will be affected in Tacoma and beyond. Thank you.